Hey there, just a quick reminder we have a mentorship program if you're looking for personalized coaching and mentorship to help guide you to the next level of your interior design business, whatever that might look like for you, whether it's processes and procedures or what services to offer to how to incorporate wellness, intention, or spirituality into your projects. Come join us over at designcoven.com/join. Or if you're just in search to connect with other like-minded interior designers, you can join our free community, also located at designcoven.com/join. In today's episode, we have special guest Amanda Gibby Peters of Simple Shui. And I wanted to bring her on because she has such a beautiful personality. Her Instagram is great. She always gives these really beautiful, easy, simple tips on Feng Shui. And I thought she would be a great person to come on, share a different perspective, share a different personality. So Amanda Gibby Peters is the voice and visionary of Simple Shui, a modern day, mission-driven, love-based practice of Feng Shui. She's been teaching Feng Shui techniques for over a decade, witnessing the breathtaking life transformations of her readers and clients. Her superpower is making complex, ethereal designs tangible, fun, and life-changing. Her work has been featured on Architectural Digest, My Domain, Food 52, Lonnie, Mind Body Green, Well and Good, and Amazon. She was recently named one of Instagram's best Feng Shui accounts by The Spruce for her vibrant and innovative influence creating positive spaces. Amanda is Dallas-based with an international clientele where she lives with her husband, twin daughters, and their rescue dog, Ruby. I hope you enjoy this episode. You're listening to the Holistic Interior Design Business Podcast. This is a podcast that guides you as a new or inspiring independent interior designer navigating your entrepreneurial path. Here, with my over 20 years experience, I will share my holistic approach to design with intention and ancient practices, including Feng Shui, all incorporating mind, body, and spirit into my design projects. You will also learn from seasoned interior designers as they give strategies and insight of how they built their businesses and continue to work in the field. Together, we will discover supportive trade partners, new ideas, creatives, and inspiring artists from around the world. I am your host, Rachel Larraine Crawford. We have Amanda Gibby Peters with us today. And before we get into our guest speaking, I'm going to go ahead and set our space by lighting a candle, calling in the spirits of our ancestors, any of our guides that are here for our best and highest good, our higher self, just to really get into the moment, calling of a signal. See if this will light. Here we go. The beeswax. Always the beeswax. It's a nice slow burn. And of course we have the Mithras beeswax candle here as our dedicated ritual candle. Ring our bell just to get us in the moment. And I'm going to pull a card as I always do. I love working with oracle cards, tarot cards. Today we're working with the Meraki Tarot by Bouchette Design. And let's see what we have. Just our card for today. It's the Four of Swords. Beautiful card. So on this card, Carrie, the designer, she has a sleeping fox with three swords up. One sword's kind of at his side there under the moonlight. And the Four of Swords is about a rest. It's about renewal, rejuvenation, really taking care of ourselves, taking a moment to pause. It's a short pause. It's nothing big and huge. It's kind of like just getting grounded, getting into our space so that we can move with intention shortly after here. Which I just love this card. So sweet. All right. And I am drinking a tea from Paru. It's a green tea. I nourishing myself with that. What I love about Paru tea is she connects with villages of, Asia to receive her teas and her tea leaves. And this is from Phin Forest. It's a village in Vietnam, which is really, really beautiful. So I'm nourishing myself with that, and it's got a beautiful golden hue to it. And it's just super soft. And I feel like all of her teas, you can just really taste the leaves and, the hills that they come from. And her teas are leaves, so you can really see the leaves when they open up as they're brewed, which I feel like is so magical. And Amanda, what do you have over there? What are you nourishing yourself with?
I'm green juice. Some really
Amazing.
lovely green juice: cucumber, kale, parsley, spinach, apple. You know the
Ooh.
works.
Yeah, yeah,
Spring
yeah.
green.
I love it. You've got breakfast in a cup.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, Amanda, I'm really excited to have you on because, I talk a bit about Feng Shui, and I've been really focusing on different areas of the home and giving some advice and some tools in that space. I had my Feng Shui teacher, Amanda Sophia from the International School of Feng Shui on in episode 2. And now I've got you on, and I just love bringing others in to share perspectives, ways of connecting with Feng Shui, different perspectives, because there's just so many avenues and paths to work with this knowledge. And I like to just have it open, so it's not like this is one way and you can only do it like this, and having it so rigid, it's not like that, at least not for me.
Right. No, I actually really appreciate that, because when I came into this practice, it felt like, well, I came in and, like most people, just thought, okay, feng shui. So I figure some stuff out and I kind of have my teeth into it. And then eventually I got certified. And shortly after that, I was writing for different spaces and places. And other practitioners started calling me out for not practicing quote unquote real feng shui. And that put me in a little bit of a paralysis, because of course you want to do things right. You want to be doing them correctly. And so that led me to figuring out, okay, what are they talking about, and learning all these different schools. And that's really the birthplace of Simple Shui. Was there are distinctions among the different approaches, but I find that a lot of them are at a much higher level, and where everyone begins is like the thread is the same. And that was the idea behind Simple Shui, was let's start here. Like, instead of going right to, sort of the esoteric reaches of this wisdom, it is thousands of years old and it has evolved and been interpreted and interpreted and then interpreted. Let's start with the things that are really right within our reach, accessible, and things that people are already overlooking. Like, we don't need to make this hard for the sake of being the most correct. So I love that you share that same opinion, because I do think whatever feng shui works for you is the right feng shui.
Exactly. There's so much behind intention, and intention to me has like such a power versus, trying to get everything right and going by the book on all these things. Cause it's like, if it doesn't resonate with you, it's not going to work. Like, even if you are like going by this very specific way of doing it, if it doesn't jive, it's like, then it hinders what it's supposed to do. And it's counter, to everything that feng shui is.
Yeah, I think too,
Essentially.
if you don't understand it, like, right, you're just doing something. I mean, I think there's some times when, I joke a lot that there is such a thing as beginner's luck. Like, when people come to feng shui and they have no idea what to expect, and they do something and it immediately lands a win, and then they're like, oh, I want to do everything feng shui from now on, right? And then they don't get the same kind of instant result, and they're like, what's happening? Is it me? Am I cursed? And it's like, there's this moment where you, like, when you don't know what to expect, you're sort of suspending all sort of resistance. And I think that's where kind of that light and that energy can get through. But I think when you start doing things just because there's a desperation, or you're like, I don't understand it, and I'm just going to do this because I think it's going to work. Like, I think you need to understand, partially so that you have a connection to what you're implementing in your home, but then also you're showing respect to the wisdom that has traveled thousands of years to you. So I do think it's worth, again, working your way up, starting at the baby end of the pool before you just cannonball in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, bring us to the beginning of how you discovered feng shui and what was your journey and what's the origin story of your business?
I love that question. So my origin story, it's kind of funny. I had just finished grad school. So my background is actually in political science and communication.
Okay.
And my husband and I had relocated to a new to us town, new to us home. We had 3-year-old twins at the time. And a lot of things had, like, just being in a new space is jarring, a lot of your creature comforts are gone. We're adjusting to this new house. There are a lot of things happening for us that are new to our routine in that. And it just felt like we were, circling a drain. And we had been in this, down whirl for a bit. And I picked up a book one day. I was having a really, really bad day on my edge. And I picked up a book and I saw the words feng shui. And I thought, okay, I think I've heard of this in college, but I read a little more. And immediately I kind of thought it was silly. I mean, I just thought, I'm going to change my house. Like, I did just change my house. Like, I changed my house and my life's going to change. Well, let me show you how well that worked. And so I came into this more as a skeptic. Like, again, and I bring up the grad school because I had just come from, like, a lot of rhetoric. And so I thought, I'm going to prove that this doesn't work. I mean, it shows how
Yeah.
little I knew. So I got a book. I found a few things that I thought I could do. And, like most people, I think a lot of people come to feng shui either because of love or job or money. And so for us, it was
Exactly.
money. It was like all of the sudden, we were in this new space. And even though we had more money coming in, it was going out a lot faster. And so that was my concern. And also liking my house. I didn't like my house that much. And so even though it met all the criteria, like, visually great, but we were not getting settled. And so I started doing things again with the intention of proving that feng shui didn't work. And, it wasn't that anything huge happened right away, although there were some
Okay.
really big wins like within 3 months. But what I found was I was always intrigued to do something else because our house was starting
Mhm.
to feel more like home. So it was a gradual, and then some big changes happened. And so then I thought, okay, but like most people, that was a coincidence. That was probably going to happen anyway. And so I set up kind of my own little test. And the test was I wanted a freelance job. It had to pay
Okay.
me so much money. It had to let me work from home because my girls were still little.
Yeah.
And long story short, I got a job right as the economy crashed and it kept me employed. And at that moment, I said, okay, no more time for being a skeptic. I need to become a student. And I went all in. And that's
Wow.
why we're here today. And I love it because when people approach me and I can see that little bit of skepticism in their eyes, or
Right.
I meet the resistance in their partner, like, what are you doing here? I don't want you
Yeah.
here. I'm like, I've been you. I know where you're
Yeah.
coming from.
So, can I ask you what was the thing that you did that opened up that space for you to manifest this job and
So it was interesting. Our office was, because we had moved to this house and we needed to share an office, and
uh-huh.
it took a long time to figure out how to do that. And so I ended up setting the office up, the way feng shui tells us, putting us both in command, which today it seems so obvious. I like people to go back. Like, this was 2007. We didn't have Instagram. We didn't have Pinterest. We didn't have all of these things that kind of visually tell us how to do this. So I was
Right.
trying to figure out this space, and feng shui gave me an option, like face the door. So I'm like, okay, so this is really important. Have something solid
Mm.
behind you. Okay, I can do that. And then what I did was I just applied for 3 jobs that weren't even looking for people. And the crazy part of this story is I went and met all 3. I went to all 3 places. I
Yeah.
met all of their CEOs just in having conversations. They weren't looking for people, and all 3 offered me a job. It was the craziest thing. And it was just like, there was this effortlessness
Yeah.
happening. And I thought, yeah, I'm too smart to call this a coincidence.
Like, you were just led by your intuition? Like, do you feel like something opened up or, like, energy or something shifted and you were more open to connecting with these people versus before you might have been more resistant or
I think what happened was I thought, "I'm all in." Like, I
Mm,
have nothing to lose, so I'm gonna do what this says. I'm gonna see if my house can help, and if I land this, you know, then there's something here. But I
yeah,
wasn't expecting, so that's the thing. Like, we get in our mind sometimes the how, like, okay, this is what, but then all the details that orchestrated, I couldn't have had any sort of intention around just the way that things, because one of those details is when I tell this story, 2 of the jobs were really glam jobs. They were like these big PR companies, and I would have loved to have worked with them. But it was the 3rd job that offered me exactly what I wanted. And in fact, shortly after I took the job, this was 2007, 2008, the economy crashed. And those
right.
other 2 places that if I'd said yes to, I would have been out of a job. The one I ended up saying yes to, sort of made my Mary Poppins list of I have to get paid this much, I have to be able to work from
Yeah,
home. They gave me what I wanted, so I said yes to them. They kept me employed for a whole year, I mean, and
yeah,
longer if I'd stayed, but I was like, "I'm ready to go to these feng shui pastures. I gotta figure
right.
out what's happening here." So, it really was, something I like to tell people is, you've gotta you wanna stay positive, which I definitely was. Like, these are all like, if I were
Right.
invited into any of these spaces, that would be fantastic, but you have to surrender the how of it, and so I was just putting myself out there knowing that I had set myself up environmentally. I'd optimized my space to give me the best results for success. What that was gonna look
Mm.
like, I didn't know,
Oh my
and
gosh.
it's such a great story.
I love it. I love it. I feel like I get so many people that do come to me for clarity and they want to know how do I, achieve the things? How do I get there? Like, and they just feel so stuck. And I love that you created an environment using feng shui to allow these doors to open and opportunities to come and then not having an expectation and just like jumping into it full force and just being like, okay, I'm here. I'm gonna
Yeah.
see what comes of it.
Yeah, and I have to remind my clients all the time, because the question I'll get a lot is, "Well, can you guarantee this will work?" Like, if I do a
Mhm.
consult or I take, your advice, can you guarantee it'll work? And the answer is, yeah, I can guarantee it'll work, but I can't guarantee it's gonna work the way you think it should. And that's such an
Right.
important distinction. And because of my story, the reason why I love my story is the universe, whatever you want to call this energy we're working with, it is far more clever and creative than I will ever be, and I consider myself a creative person, but you don't want me trying to author how this is gonna unfold for you. What I can say is I have 15 plus years of experience watching people, watching how things just line up exactly the way they need it, and in a way that I could have never on my own. Had I retreated to the top of a
Yeah.
mountain and done my best, there's no way I could have ever come up with that for them.
And that's where the magic is. It's so incredible. Oh, I just love it. So then what brought you to creating your business as it is now?
So, I mean, it kind of is what I, was mentioning before. I had a mentor. So initially what I did was I had different people consult for
Okay.
our home, right? So I brought someone in my house. I reached out to someone, had, a couple consults over the phone. I was reading everything I could get my hands on. Again, today
Mhm.
there's a wealth of knowledge, but this was pre-Amazon, so this was a little different. Like, you really had to be intentional if you wanted to
Yeah,
find
for sure.
information. And then I kind of made the mistake, or the assumption, I shouldn't say mistake, but the assumption, like, well, I've read everything. I have this figured out. And I luckily had a mentor who grabbed me kind of, for 10 minutes and just peppered me with a lot of questions that I couldn't answer. And she's like, "You
Mm.
don't have this figured out." She's like, "Find a school and get certified. And then you can put yourself out there. Like, yes, you make sense of what you know, but there's so much that you
Right.
don't know."
Right.
And she was absolutely right. So I went and got certified. And then I had that moment where I was sort of being, harassed with, like, this isn't the correct way. You're
Mhm.
misleading people. So I went and got certified again. And in that, I just realized, like, this isn't about perfectionism. When
Right.
we talk about energy, it's not linear, it's not straight, it's not perfect. It's meant to wiggle and weave, and it's generous and forgiving, and there's a lot of on-ramp here for people. And if we keep this intimidating, if we keep making this feel out of reach, if we keep people in that paralysis of like, well, if I don't do it right, then they're never going to be able to, experience what a lot of this common sense wisdom has to offer them. And so that's where Simple Shui came from. And it was really this intention of keeping, and it's right there in my statement, like love based, right? We don't need
Mhm.
people afraid, mission driven. You need to come to this intentionally. You need to be deliberate about it, right? And modern day, meaning yes, there are things that have carried over from thousands of years, but
Right.
when you understand the history of Feng Shui, it evolved to meet people where they were at. The reason there are so many schools is because every time there was a migration, the wisdom or the practice changed a little to meet people where they're at. And I don't think it's any different today. And so I really like, and I want people to feel like they can bring in their own
Yeah.
journey, their own practices, their own belief systems to this. It doesn't have to be this box. So that's Simple Shui.
Absolutely, I love it. And, who are the people that you're working with? Who are your clients, and what are they coming to you with and having questions on?
So I have a pretty wide span of clients.
Mhm.
I would say I have clients who are building homes, clients who are renovating. So that would be a portion of clients. I started right shortly after COVID, I started doing this thing called a group consult where if you didn't want to invest in working one on one, if you weren't
Yeah.
kind of ready for that close up or you didn't want someone, looking at your space, because there is a vulnerability to that. I created a 6-week course where you could come and I would teach you what my process is, sort of like what I'm looking at. And
Yeah.
then you can go shui crazy in your home. Like you can figure this out. And so in that, I've had the most amazing quote unquote clients because it's everyone. It's energy workers, it's coaches, it's, designers, it's organizers, it's
Mhm.
business people, CEOs, it's everyone. And it's amazing to watch how this flourishes in all of these different spaces and places.
Mm. It's so beautiful, I love it. I love that you're able to tap into all the things, and I love the simpleness of all of it and bringing it down. I mean, just what you're saying, meeting people where they are right now. So, could you give us what are your top tips that you might have for somebody right now that's maybe never heard of feng shui or they're interested? Like, what do you have anything that they could use at the moment to shift some
Yeah,
energy?
I kind of have a couple things that I think that generate really big wins, and I'm guessing you'll probably agree. One, because most people do come, with some concern around wealth. Even if they have wealth, people are always interested in like having or making or creating or ensuring more. And
Right.
so, one of the simplest things that I can do is to create this sense of wealth in your home. And that doesn't mean like having expensive things. I think sometimes feng shui gets confused with design or it gets confused as being like cost exhaustive or needing to be expensive. And it's not that. I always joke
Yeah.
like, if you have a room that has high thread count, but you don't use it, it doesn't have great feng shui. It's all about your energy being engaged in the space. But
Right,
one of
right.
the things that I do love is like treating your house to something nice once a week. So I like
Mm.
to bring flowers home, but I think this can be opening windows. This can be tidying up a space. This can be, removing some stuff. If a room feels like it's just kind of congested or stagnant, it could be changing things up, right? Like there are different ways that you can love up on your house. So
Absolutely.
that is a really big one. People think that's so simple. Where it gets tricky is trying to do it every week. And if you start creating that connective tissue, it can be a game changer. But the other piece of advice I have is really starting at one of or all of your what we kind of consider power spots in your home, your front door, your kitchen, and your
Mhm.
bedroom. Any sort of TLC you apply there will totally shift how you're showing up in the world. I mean, we know the front door, we hear realtors talk about curb appeal. and
Yep.
it really is about how we're presenting to the world, but it's also how we're informing energy that comes into our lives. So, getting into the habit of sweeping your porch, wiping down your door, you know, cleaning your path if anything grows over it or newspapers pile up, making sure the light bulbs work, that
Right.
your address is visible. All of this speaks to how the world sees you. And it is a big deal, and it does make a noticeable shift when you start tending to it with that intention. Bedroom speaks to, self-care, boundaries,
Hmm.
prioritizing yourself. And, I'm sure as a designer, you've seen this. I see it all the time. I go into homes and it's like all the rooms are pretty well appointed, but then you get to the bedroom and it's the afterthought. It's the place that like maybe the
Right.
Peloton bike is, or the Amazon boxes, or the kids stuff, or the,
Yeah.
whatever. Like it's not a social area of the home, so go hide it in there. But then people are like, I'm having this hard time being considered for this promotion, or, my spouse isn't taking me seriously enough. And I'm like, if you don't
Mhm.
prioritize yourself in the bedroom, you're not going to be prioritized in the relationships in your life. And so for me, a bedroom is about sleep, sex, sensuality, and stillness. And stillness doesn't
Absolutely.
need to be just meditation. It's just like that oneness with yourself, right? Being able
Hmm.
to kind of plummet your own soul when you need to. So if you have things in there that don't subscribe to that, they need to
Yeah.
find another space, because that's a great way to, it's where we're most vulnerable. So when you want to rejuvenate, when you want to refresh, when you want to
Absolutely.
feel good, when you want to step out into the world as your fullest self, bedroom. And then kitchen, wellness, well being,
Hmm.
prosperity. So all of those things get amplified when you're taking care of the kitchen.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love it. And I'm like, you've just inspired me. I'm like, I mean, like, we know all these things, but it's like when you hear it from somebody else, then you're like, oh shoot, I gotta like when you're like talking about the bedroom, like, okay, what's in there? What needs to be like moved out? What needs to be shifted? Like, and especially, in the kitchen too, things pile up in there. So it's like, okay, how do I reorganize? And then the front door, up, the sweeping, that is huge. And just
Yeah.
being really conscious about it. One of the things, in California, we all have these attached garages that might lead into the kitchen and people park in there and then they go into the house that way. So it's
Mhm.
always a reminder for others to use your front door, like, open up that chi, that's the main space, like, if you're constantly going in through the garage, it's not finding it, and then you forget what the front door looks like, and you don't pay
Yeah.
attention to what's growing, and you don't notice the bulb is out or that you don't even turn on your porch light, and, so
Yeah, one way to kind of get a really honest litmus test is to ask someone, like, describe the front of my space. That's, when I go on consults, that's one of the first things that I notice. My consult starts as I'm driving into the
absolutely.
area about a mile out. You're considering the land and what's happening there. And then as you're
Yep.
approaching a home, how do I feel? Because all of that impacts the energy of your home. I think there's a little misunderstanding out there that feng shui is just what's happening in your house. And it actually is, a much wider, bigger circle than that. So, your front door is an opportunity to really empower your space, because once you leave your property, you have no control, right? So,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, what can I do to really amplify, make sure that the energy that I'm sitting on, living on, growing on is working to the best of my ability, and yeah, you do become we get really familiar and tolerant of our
Mhm.
spaces, and sometimes a fresh pair of eyes will give you that nudge. Like, "Oh,
Oh,
well, I
absolutely.
noticed that the numbers aren't as shiny, or I can't see your address, or there's some weeds, or there's some." And those are all opportunities. Those are invitations. It's not like, "Oh my gosh, my house." They're
Right.
opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, we become so blind to what's happening in our
Mhm.
homes and design wise too. Like I'll come in and I'll see something very obvious to me about we need to shift this or something needs to move or whatever. And they're like, oh, why didn't I even think about that? Or I never noticed it looked like that. Or, it's
Mm.
like these aha moments, which are really, really cool to be able to bring somebody in to take a look at it for you. And like you said with a friend, like having someone just come in and give their opinion and what they're feeling, because that's huge.
Yeah, it is. And we think that we're not affected by it, like it doesn't matter. But I would challenge everyone to just go do a little TLC, or even hop over to my site. I talk about the front door all the time. Front door and flowers are like my jam. So get some tips over there, like do something and watch for those
Yeah.
coincidences, watch for those synchronicities, watch for what happens, because that is the vibrational feedback. You can't change something and it not ripple out and bring something in return. So
Oh my
it's
gosh,
a
I
it's a
love it.
small enough space that everyone can kind of get their arms around it.
Yeah, this is so beautiful. So you just like inspired me to come up with an idea of like a feng shui challenge for those of you,
Nice.
maybe for a week. We'll when this comes out, maybe for that week, we'll just do a new challenge every day and see what people say and see, what has shifted and changed in their homes.
Oh my gosh, I would love that. I
You want to do
yes, like
that?
let's
Okay.
do that.
We're going to do that. So as soon as this comes out, I'm going to connect with you on that week and then we're going to create this feng shui challenge and it's going to be beautiful and I can't wait. And these are simple things, that I
Yes.
feel like we can do it all. And we do it for a week and see what happens. It's so
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. I love it
Okay,
too.
sweet.
I love that. And it creates that momentum. So if you want to stay with it, we got you started.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can get into some more deeper stuff as you go. You don't
Yeah.
have to eat all of it at once. We can take little bites. It's so
Yeah.
perfect. Amanda, I forgot to ask you earlier, what is home to you? What I always start usually with that question, what is home?
I mean, home is really like that contentment. Like for me, contentment, right? So
Mhm.
starts within, our personal chi. And then having that supported in my
Mhm.
environment. My home is sacred space. I'm very particular about it because, again, like I said, we can't control what happens once we
Right.
step outside our door, and the world is becoming more chaotic. And not only more chaotic, but we're overly connected to it in a way that 20 years ago we weren't. So, contentment. And, you know, I think just feeling like having grounding myself.
Yeah.
That's home, is feeling grounded.
Mm.
Because we're so much in our heads, we're so much on our devices, we're so much, we're busy. And
Right.
so that connecting back to the earth, that's home to me.
Mm. I love it. And do you have any rituals or practices that you're doing right now that you're really enjoying?
So one of the things that I'm doing this year is because I'm in like a lot of creation mode. And
Okay.
so I am, just like I said, in my head a lot. So I am outside grounding a lot, standing barefoot. I
Mm.
don't, that's not feng shui specific.
That's okay.
But
I'm just curious.
you read over and over and over how, that just neutralizes, gets you
Yeah.
back into your body out of your head. And it's interesting because from a feng shui perspective, the five elements, earth can it takes whatever energy and just neutralizes it, right? So you hear about people cleansing things by burying it in the dirt. Like that's a
Yep.
powerful way to cleanse. You don't always have to use the moon or the sun or
Yep.
a sage stick. You can bury something. And so I'm trying to do that more just to kind of offload anything but get back in my body. I'm a big gratitude journaler. Um, Over COVID, I really made that an intentional practice. And in a way that, most of us, we kind of ride a wave. We do it and then we
Right.
don't do it. We do it and we don't
Yep.
do it. I was really intentional for an entire year. And I can say with 100% conviction, it was a game changer. It really
Wow.
did. I found that if I started my day writing down what I was grateful for, even if I felt like it was taking a long time,
Uh-huh.
because we're so inundated with like what's wrong, right? And
Right.
the urge
Right.
is to, kind of fume, that I didn't have any energy left to complain. So it was like this really beautiful practice that way at the height of some really nasty stuff, right? So I love that. And then I would say the other ritual I have is trying to ask a lot less why.
Mm.
I'm trying to keep myself light on my feet and not have so much drag. And I tend to be like, but why? But why? But why? And so I'm trying to, when it's necessary, go there, but not let it be like, shotgun. I don't want it driving shotgun with me.
Yeah, just when you were saying, dragging you, I'm like, "Oh my god, that question is" I feel like it is, like, pulling you down when you ask that question of why. It's like it's pulling you in, pulling you down, and it's like
Yes.
you can't move forward because you've got this thing that's attached to you.
Yeah. So I mean it has its place and there's some big
Mhm.
conversations where it's absolutely needed. But just in our day to day, it's almost become the crutch. Like, but why? Why? So yeah, so that's something I'm trying to turn the volume way down on.
Right, right, right. And, so what's brewing for you? What's coming up? What are you working on? What's the next thing that you're diving
So,
into?
big things, big things. So, like I said, I taught this 6-week course where I introduce people to my process, and I'm turning it into an online course that people will be
Oh,
able to buy. In May, there's a level
okay.
2 to it as well that'll be available in July. And then later this fall, I'm actually going to launch my own certification program. And so
Amazing.
that's gonna be really big, and I'm excited about that. It's a lot of work. I mean, I kinda thought I was gonna have an easier year because our girls are gonna be going off to film school,
Oh my
and
gosh.
instead I'm like, there's just so much. Hence the grounding.
Wow. Well, you're gonna have to keep me posted so that I can share all these things so people can
I will.
connect with you, with these courses and the certification. That's so beautiful. And how can we connect with you? I know you're very active on Instagram.
I would say if you are on Instagram and you want feng shui tips, definitely follow me, Amanda Gibby Peters. I joke that I take Instagram to the fullest character count.
Amazing.
So there's always great tips, and I mean, you can scroll forever.
Oh,
My
nice.
blog, I've been blogging since 2008, so you can go over to simpleshui.com. There's a ton of information there. There are videos. I have a book on Amazon, Simple Shui for Every Day, 365 Ways to Feng Shui Your Life. And then those courses, and again, the certification later this year. So lots of different spaces for people to kind of dip their toes in and
Mhm.
experience this. And I would just, like I said, I would encourage everyone to love up on the front door.
Yes, that's so important. So we're gonna have all your links in the show notes so people can just go straight there. You don't have to write any of this down and connect with you. And then we will do that 7-day feng shui challenge when this goes up. So
Oh, I'm
I'm
so excited
excited
about
for
that.
that. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for being on with us and just giving us these beautiful tips and making feng shui approachable and simple and available to everybody. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. And thanks for having me. This was a really great space to start the weekend.
Absolutely. Thank you. You've been listening to the Holistic Interior Design Business podcast. If it's one that you have been enjoying, please share with anyone else that you think can benefit from this knowledge and leave us a 5-star review that helps us get seen and found by other new and aspiring interior designers. And if you're looking for mentorship, I invite you to join our club here at the Design Coven. It's a bridge between school and real life interior design. We get in much deeper there. We have virtual and in person events. So everyone is welcome. You don't need to have a design degree to be part of it, just an interest in holistic interior design. I also want to thank our editor, Marcy Ferry, and lastly, Kinseth Thibodeau, who is our music composer. Until next time, be well, and we will see each other soon.